A portion of this video was sponsored by ProClip USA.
This is the new 2022 Audi Q4 E-Tron, and it's Audi's latest fully electric luxury crossover. This starts around $54,000, which makes it a lot more affordable than a Tesla Model Y, which starts around $68,000. And this has around 300 horsepower and standard all-wheel drive. And today, I'm going to review it and show you all the quirks and features. Before I get started, I want to talk about ProClip USA, which specializes in high-quality phone mounts. If you're looking for a safe and sturdy spot in your car to place your phone for GPS navigation or hands-free calling or listening to your favorite music or podcasts, ProClip has you covered. That's because ProClip mounts are machine-tooled out of high-quality plastic, not cheap stuff that breaks easily. They're also designed specifically for your exact car, and you can see it in my Land Rover Defender. The ProClip mount snaps tightly into place for a solid and secure fit, and ProClip makes mounts that seamlessly fit into a wide variety of different vehicles. You may pay more for a ProClip mount, but you get what you pay for with high quality parts and an excellent integration into your car, and frankly, it's worth it. Of course, ProClip mounts are specifically designed to fit the iPhone and many other types of popular smartphones, and you can choose between various configurations, including with or without a case and with or without charging. So don't settle for a flimsy phone vent clip. Check out ProClip for a high-quality phone mount, and use the description in the link below to get your ProClip specifically designed for your car. Alright, time for the quirks and features, the new Q4 E-Tron. But before I get started, I want to thank Hohen Audi Carlsbad for providing me with this Q4 E-Tron. Audi Carlsbad is my local Audi dealership here in the San Diego area, and they have all of the latest Audi models, including a few Q4 models that's just starting to roll out to dealers. You can check out Hohen Audi Carlsbad by clicking the link in the description below. But let's move on to the Q4 and talk over exactly what this is. Like I said, fully electric Audi crossover. There's no gas-powered, no plug-in hybrid version. All Q4 models are electric. And in terms of sizing, this slots right between the Q3 and the Q5 in Audi's lineup, which makes sense given its name, the Q4. Now, this is based on the Volkswagen ID.4, which is Volkswagen's latest electric crossover, but one big difference, that comes standard with a two-wheel drive model that has around 200 horsepower. This skips that, and it comes standard with the ID.4's optional powertrain, standard in the Q4, which is all-wheel drive and around 300 horsepower. Now, other markets will get lesser Q4 models with two-wheel drive and with less power, but here in North America, Audi is launching the Q4 with all-wheel drive standard and that 300 horsepower electric powertrain, although more variants will surely follow in the future. Now, as for the electric range for the Q4, the EPA says around 240 miles of full electric, which is pretty good, although it's no match for Tesla. Even a base level Model Y starts around 320 miles of electric range, which obviously is a lot more. But the Model Y also costs a lot more than the Q4. Like I mentioned earlier, this starts around $54,000, whereas a Model Y starts around $68,000. So you don't get as much as the Model Y in terms of range, but you also don't pay as much, which seems to make sense. Now, like I said, 300 horsepower in this vehicle, and it does 0 to 60 in around 5.8 seconds, which is relatively spry, although not quite as fast as some other electric vehicle competitors, still pretty quick. Also worth pointing out that the Q4 E-Tron is DC fast charging capable, which is a big deal because that means if you find the right charger, you can charge this from 5% to 80% in just 38 minutes, which is pretty fast in the world of electric vehicles to add that much charge back to it, and that's standard on all Q4 models. But anyway, with the basics out of the way, next we move inside inside the Q4 E-Tron to go over the interior quirks and features, and I must say, it's not that quirky in here, especially compared to the Volkswagen ID.4, which this car is based on. That has some very interesting and unusual interior items. This is a little bit more buttoned up, a little bit more traditional kind of luxury car. But there are some interesting quirks in this interior, and one of them is definitely the situation around the driver's seat and the key. So check this out. You get inside the car with the key in your pocket, you sit down, and it automatically starts turning on accessories. It knows that you're there and you're about to drive, and so it starts that process. Put your foot on the brake and the car completely starts itself up. From there, you can just shift into drive and go. There is a start-stop button, but it's irrelevant. It senses you're there, it senses you have the key, and you can just get going without pressing a start-stop. That's true of a lot of electric vehicles, but the quirky thing about the Q4 is the same is true when you're getting out. You drive this car, park it somewhere, and you can see I'm getting out and the screens are starting to shut off, even though I never pressed the start-stop button or even put it in park. And when you climb outside, the entire car shuts off. You basically can't leave this car running because it completely turns off automatically for you. And the interesting thing is you can even leave the key inside of it, but as long as you get out of the driver's seat and walk away, it senses you're not sitting there and it starts to turn off, which is unusual and might have some odd unintended consequences, but that is one quirky feature of the Audi Q4. And there are some other quirks in here too, like for example, the fact that everything is angled. You can see the dashboard is kind of sharp edges and angles, and that even includes the steering wheel, which is not a wheel at all. Instead, it's sort of flat on the top and on the bottom. It has kind of a hexagon shape actually, which you see in like race car steering wheels, but rarely in luxury electric crossovers, but that is the situation here. Another interesting quirk here is the gear selector, which is actually just this switch. Kind of strange. You push it up for reverse, you pull it towards you for drive, neutral is somewhere in the middle, and to get into park, you press this P button at the top of everything, or you just open the door and that automatically sends the car into park, so sort of a weird gear selector. Also in this vicinity, and also rather quirky, is the volume adjustment situation for this car. You can see this little circle here with various media controls, next track, mute, power, but this control is also the volume adjustment dial for this car, and to do that, you just run your finger in a circular motion around this control, and that adjusts the volume. To the right to turn it up, to the left to turn it down. Certainly a rather quirky control, not some separate knob or dial, but that's how you adjust the volume in this car. A little unusual. And next up, speaking of stereo and media controls in this car, another cool quirk is that the steering wheel controls are not just buttons like they are in almost every other car. Instead, they're little sliders, capacitive touch, and you can slide your finger over to change the track or change the volume. As you can see, you can slide rather than touch. Now, it's worth pointing out you can also touch. If you press down on any of these buttons on the steering wheel, that'll do what you want to, but you can also slide to add kind of a futuristic new era experience to the Q4 interior. And next up, speaking of slidey controls in this car, how about the sunroof, which is controlled with these little pieces here. They don't look like traditional switches or buttons, and they're not. Instead, you swipe your finger over this little pad and that opens up the sunroof, and if you swipe it the other direction, that would close the sunroof. The one next to it is the same thing for the sunshade. You swipe one way to open it and swipe the other way to close it. We are leaving behind physical buttons in favor of sliders. This is apparently the future. Kind of interesting. And next up, I want to talk infotainment in this car. It seems very futuristic, fully electric, some unusual controls, but the infotainment isn't exactly very futuristic. Now, that's both a good and a bad. The good is it's a lot like other Audi infotainment systems, which means if you're used to other Audi models, you'll find yourself right at home here. You don't have to completely relearn some new system. It's not totally advanced, totally confusing. It's all relatively straightforward and easy and fairly simple, which I suspect a lot of EV buyers want. But that also means it's not as futuristic and daring, as exciting as some infotainment systems. You don't have like a drawing pad like you do in Ford electric vehicles. You don't have video games like you have in Tesla. Instead, a fairly standard, straightforward Audi infotainment system. And by the way, worth pointing out, the Q4 is not available with over-the-air updates to its infotainment or to the car itself, which is pretty old school. Most new electric cars, you can have updates come in and suddenly you wake up and you have a new feature. Not the case with the Q4, which is kind of disappointing. Doesn't really feel very futuristic. But on the subject of infotainment, let's talk gauge cluster screen, which is excellent. Audi has a fantastic gauge cluster screen technology. They call it virtual cockpit, and it works very well. You can see very configurable, shows all sorts of different things, full screen map, your level of charge, speed, the music you're listening to, and you can configure it to show exactly what you want, and very easily with these simple steering wheel controls, including another little slidey pad. Just slide over, up, down, left, right to whatever you want to see, and then you can see it, which is nice. It's also worth pointing out that the top spec Audi Q4, the Prestige model, offers an augmented reality navigation system. What that means is it actually projects onto the windshield the directions where you need to turn. It doesn't just say turn left in 20 meters. Instead, it shows an arrow pointing to the street you're supposed to turn at as you approach that street, to make it especially easy to figure out where the navigation system is telling you to go. Some other brands have started adding augmented reality navigation, and now apparently it's on the Q4 as well, which is a pretty cool feature. But like I said, that is on the top spec Prestige model, which this is not. Instead, this is a mid-level premium plus version. This is probably the version most people will get, and it has a total sticker price of around $64,000. So like I said, starts around 54. This one equipped pretty popularly to around 64 grand, which is on par with a lot of rivals. But anyway, next up we move on to the back seat of the Q4, and I have to say it is shockingly roomy back here. Now, I say that and you'll notice I don't have a ton of knee room or a ton of headroom, but like I said earlier, this is positioned between the Q3 and the Q5 in Audi's lineup. This is a compact crossover, and yet I can sit relatively comfortably back here, which is very rare for someone my height in a compact crossover. And the reason for the rather roomy rear seat situation is the electric vehicle packaging. You don't have some massive engine up front, so you can kind of enlarge the entire interior and give more space to front and rear passengers and cargo room, and that really shows in here. Surprisingly roomy rear seat considering the overall size of this car. And another cool thing back here, you don't have a giant hump in the center of the rear seat like you do in virtually every other car. Because of the electric vehicle packaging, it's a pretty flat floor back here, and that means even the middle passenger will be at least somewhat comfortable in the back seat of the Q4 E-Tron. But aside from the roominess back here and surprisingly large rear seat, there's not all that much that's interesting or quirky. You do have rear seat climate controls and rear climate vents, which is nice to see, and you have USB-C ports back here for charging devices, but that's all pretty standard fare for luxury electric vehicles, especially at this price point, and so not too much going on in back worth pointing out. But anyway, next up we move from the back seat to the cargo area, the back, where you will discover it is fairly large back here. Not exactly huge, but larger than you might expect from a compact crossover, and again, in part due to the electric vehicle packaging, generous and practically sized back here. You can put all your stuff. Now, it's worth pointing out here that there are two versions of the Q4. You have the regular Q4 SUV, which is what this is, and there's also the Q4 Sportback, which has kind of a sloping roofline in back. It looks cooler, or at least that's what Audi thinks people will think, but this has more cargo space, so you gotta choose between the cool look of the Sportback and the extra practicality of the normal Q4. Now, one interesting thing that I noticed around the back of the Q4, you can see as the tailgate closes here, is there's no electric vehicle badging. So many electric cars say EV or have some lightning bolt or whatever on the outside. This just says Q4 over on the left and Quattro all-wheel drive over on the right, and that's it. No electric stuff like you might expect, except you look a little closer and you will see that E-Tron is actually imprinted into the rear bumper back here. So there is one little piece of relatively subtle badging. It's large, but it's painted. You don't really see it, but it is there. Now, as for the rear end design of this car, you can see the lights are fairly standard like other Audi models. You got a light bar in the center like most new Audis do, and you also have these sweeping turn signals, which has become kind of an Audi hallmark, and a lot of other brands are adopting it as well. Nothing too unusual there, although I do like the 4-ring Audi logo lighting up here on the outsides of the lights when they're on. That is a very cool look. When the taillights are on, you get to see kind of a neat little Audi logo integration. And you have a similar thing when you open up the door. The bottom of the door projects the Audi logo down onto the ground, which is a cool little reminder at night that you're driving a cool Audi. Some nice badging integrations. And next we move up front, where there's some other notable quirks to discuss. Lighting isn't one of them, pretty standard up here, but you do have a few other interesting items, like E-Tron is once again pressed into the bodywork up here. You can see it in front too, just like we saw in back. You will also notice the grille is not really a grille. It's just this big plastic piece. Electric cars don't need air coming into the engine, and so the grille has kind of been swapped out for a style piece. Same deal with the Audi emblem. No longer like the car badges of the old days, metal or plastic. Instead, it's a sensor for the radar cruise control systems and advanced driving aids. So the grille isn't a grille anymore, and the emblem isn't an emblem, kind of a brave new automotive world. One other thing worth pointing out, there is no front storage in the Q4. You open up the hood, you can see mechanical components under here. Some electric vehicles do have small front trunks, but you don't get one in the Q4. You just got to make do with what you have in the cargo area and in the passenger compartment. All right, driving the Q4 E-Tron. I think everybody's first question about this car, at least my first question, is how much different is it from the ID4? Because it's essentially being pitched as a luxury ID4. So the question then is it different enough to justify the price increase? This is about $10,000 more expensive than an ID4 with the same powertrain, that same 300 horsepower powertrain. So is it 10 grand better? And I think quick answer is, it depends what you're looking for, but in a lot of ways, yes. Obviously, the Audi brand name in itself carries some additional weight over the Volkswagen brand name, and that's going to have some benefit to a lot of people. But beyond that, you got a nicer interior. You have a luxury, Audi interior with nicer materials. Everything looks better in here, feels better. It's just nicer to touch, nicer all-around seating experience in this car. It also feels a little bit quieter than the ID4. It just feels a little bit nicer in terms of like a luxury, calm driving experience. Not to say that this is a Mercedes S-Class or a Bentley or something like that, but it is definitely less noisy in here, more insulated from the road, feels more luxurious when you're driving, less road noise, less tire noise, less wind noise, that sort of thing. So I do think you have a nice big benefit over the ID4 in terms of all that stuff. Now, in terms of how this actually is as an electric vehicle, it's kind of a mixed bag. There's some pros and cons to this car. The range is definitely a little bit disappointing. 240 miles is enough for most people, but it's just not where a lot of modern electric cars are. So many EVs are now crossing the 300 threshold. 400 is becoming a more popular target for EVs, and 240 electric miles is just not really all that competitive. Now, with that said, in terms of pricing, that's fairly reasonable, actually. To get an electric luxury vehicle at this price point with 240 miles, it's fine. It's just that some buyers are specifically going to not buy this car because it has a 240 mile range and they don't feel that that's enough for them. Now, in terms of how this car drives, separate from the ID4 situation, it's fine. Like I said, it feels luxurious. It's fairly removed from the road. Tire noise is minimal. Wind noise is minimal. That aspect of it, those things are nice. And it feels like a reasonably nice kind of luxury-ish car. Not like a top level one, but a nice luxury car. I think the rest of the driving experience, though, is fairly normal. I wouldn't say it's particularly fast. 0 to 60 is 5.8 seconds, which is fine, but for electric vehicles now, so many of them are doing it in 3 point something or 4 point something, that high fives is just not all that special. And beyond that, it handles okay, but it's not like a sports car. It's not spry or exciting or fast, quick to go around corners. It's fine. This is not intended to be a sporty electric vehicle. Audi has the e-tron GT for that. This is intended to be kind of an everyman, like, get a luxury crossover. Well, why not go electric? Instead of getting a Q5, well, here's this other option, and that's what this offers. And in that sense, I think it does it very well, and it's a desirable car, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's like particularly exciting or thrilling or fun. This is just kind of intended to be like a mainstream entry-level luxury electric vehicle. I would put it on par with the Q5, except now it's the Q4 is the electric version. Q5s are tremendously popular. You see them everywhere. They're kind of fit all types of ages and all demographics. A lot of people like them, and I think that that's intended for this car too. So don't come into this expecting to find some crazy enthusiast vehicle, because that's not what it is. But it's comfortable, it's nice, it's luxurious, and I think it adds some Audi to the EV SUV world. Now, Audi already has an EV SUV called the E-Tron. This is the Q4 E-Tron. You can see this is a brand in the infancy of naming these vehicles. That one is positioned higher in the lineup. It's more powerful, it's more expensive. This is supposed to be sort of more of an entry-level model, and it serves that purpose. If you want a nice electric crossover luxury, but you don't want to spend crazy money for like a Tesla, an X or a Y or something really up there, this is nice. It's fine. It's not amazing, incredible, knock your socks off, but it's fine, just like in the same way the Q5 is. And for that reason, I think it'll do reasonably well. And so that's the new 2022 Audi Q4 E-Tron. This doesn't have the range of a Tesla or the performance, but it also doesn't have the price tag. And if you're looking for a luxury electric crossover, Audi hopes you'll consider this. And now it's time to give the Q4 E-Tron a DOUGSCORE.
And the DOUGSCORE is here, 55 out of 100, which places the Q4 E-Tron here against EV rivals. It does fine, pretty much exactly as I expected, falling below the very best in the segment, but it's also more affordable than most of those too. Truthfully, the Q4 E-Tron is a nice luxury electric crossover. It's not especially amazing in any one area, but it offers Audi luxury and tech with an electric powertrain, and that's a desirable combination for many shoppers.